All right, welcome back to the Rum Ration podcast. I'm Colin, joined as always by my podcasting battle buddy, Rejoy. We're both former infantry types from the Canadian Army Reserve, so we've seen our share, more than our share, of good ideas from the higher ups.
Had some of them.
Yeah. And they usually involved us carrying more weight in the rain, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
But today we're talking about a cunning plan, so massive it literally redefines the term heavy lift.
Yeah, massive is a good word for it. So it's 1942, and the Allies are, they're in a bad spot.
Yeah, tough.
We've heard this story before. So there we are. German U-boats are gutting merchant shipping in the North Atlantic. There's this mid-Atlantic gap where land-based planes just can't reach to provide cover. Because remember, it's 1942.
Right.
So if you're a sailor out there, well, you're basically a sitting duck.
Yeah, sitting duck worried about, torpedoes coming from
all over the place.
Do most ducks worry about torpedoes? I don't think so.
Well, there's a lot that one can say about that.
Everyone had problems out there, not just the ducks. And the biggest problem for the Allies really was steel or the lack of it. Every scrap was going into tanks, plane engines, guns, and of course, traditional ships. And we were running out of the very material needed to win what is becoming quickly a war of attrition.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Colin, because, all of us history nerds, military history nerds, we love to talk about the battles. We love to talk about strategy and tactics and what happened. But
courageous men doing things. Courageous women doing things, yeah.
Exactly. But one forgets that there's a lot more involved in logistics, industry, and this running out of steel. It's not a glorious story, is it? But it's a incredibly important factor. And the British, well, they needed floating air bases basically in the middle of the ocean to close this mid-Atlantic gap. So, first of all, you're thinking about this gap. You've got this little area where it was a hunting ground for the U-boats. Nobody could reach them. The convoys had to traverse that gap. So there they are. It's a good word, sitting ducks. What do? Let's build floating air bases that we can base planes off of. Sounds like a great idea. What's the problem? Don't have the metal to build them. So that's the environment where insane starts to sound more like innovative.
Now, speaking of insane, enter Geoffrey Pyke. Now, this guy is a piece of work. Description-wise, he's like a cross between Albert Einstein and Howard Hughes. And not like the early Howard Hughes, kind of like towards the end Howard Hughes.
Ooh.
Yeah, he was a brilliant, eccentric problem solver working for combined operations under Lord Mountbatten.
Yeah, and the thing is, and we've all, you and I both come across people who have suffered from this condition.
Don't say it.
Hypergraphia. Literally couldn't
That's not where I thought you were going.
Well, that's also there, but the other one is also very much there, more so than this one. But we'll get to that. And no, names will not be mentioned to protect the guilty. But what is hypergraphia? The first one, the less severe one, it's literally he could not stop writing on scraps of paper. So again, and being in university and friends, you always have people who are really into their subjects. They're writing on all sorts of stuff. So fine. It's a bit of a weird thing to do, but it's okay. But then there's the other thing. His hygiene.
Yes.
Hygiene. His hygiene was so bad, he actually repulsed the American military when he went over to work on the M29 Weasel. So you've got hypergraphia, which the sources describe as an insistent and consuming need to write at any and all times of the day or night. So that's bad enough. But, it doesn't preclude one from bathing, of course.
No.
So we can't really blame Pyke's poor hygiene on his hypergraphia.
No. And I wonder if hypergraphia is still a thing now that you can take your notes on your phone. Like, are you still writing on little scraps of paper, or is it still a thing but you're just recording the notes? I'm going to have to look into this. I'm curious.
That's very interesting, yeah.
And well done for not mentioning the name of who I thought you were going to mention. But what was Pyke's big idea? Pyke was he stopped trying to find more steel. He wanted to replace it and use the most abundant resource on the planet, water, specifically frozen water, also known in a scientific term as ice. He proposed building massive aircraft carriers out of icebergs.
Well, hey, I'm sure there's a Marvel movie somewhere out there.
Iceman cometh.
Yeah, that's right. Well, some sources suggest Pyke was inspired by Inuit sleds reinforced with moss. Okay.
Huh?
But
Sure.
others say, I'm sure he wrote that or read that somewhere while not taking a bath. But others say that the material discovery came from, of all things, a Brooklyn polytechnic.
Interesting. So ice alone is brittle. It shatters and it sags. If anyone's ever dropped an ice cube as they're pouring themselves a gin tonic. But then researchers discover a game changer, frozen wood pulp mixed with water. And they called it pykrete, so named after the smelly Mr. Pyke. So I guess pykrete, get it?
It's a very clever name. It's very clever.
I think it is. I think we should make some pykrete ice cubes for our gin tonics next time we get together.
I think that's a very good idea. And well, we're not going to go into names again, are we? So
No.
No. It's roughly 14% wood pulp for those who really want to know the makeup of it. If you want to make your own at home, 14% wood pulp or sawdust, so you'll need that, and 86% ice, and the properties were incredible. I mean, when you read about the ingredients, you think to yourself, this is the weirdest, stupidest, most fucked up idea I've ever heard about. But it's actually tougher than concrete and significantly stronger than regular ice. You could machine it like wood or cast it like metal or concrete. Is that not incredible?
Pretty incredible. And speaking of incredible, for infantry guys like us, probably the most impressive part is the durability. A rifle round will shatter ice, obviously, but it would just ricochet off this pykrete.
Yeah. And, so people are going to say, yeah, but you're talking about ice, and 86% of that product is ice. It's going to melt. Well, you'd be surprised because it melted way, way slower than traditional ice. When immersed, it formed an insulating shell of wet pulp on the surface, and that's what protected the core. So there you go. That's what the pulp is there for. Suddenly, a ship of ice didn't look like a joke to the bosses anymore.
Wet pulp. I've been described that on the beach.
Isn't that the name of a band? No. That was just pulp.
That's why. Lord Mountbatten, of course, is Pyke's big cheerleader. He takes a block of pykrete to Winston Churchill. And there's this famous story that he actually barged into Churchill's bathroom while the Prime Minister was in the tub. And we know that Winnie loved having a bath.
Oh,
he dropped the block into the hot water to show that it wouldn't melt.
Winnie should have taken the opportunity to say to him, why don't you jump in here with me while you're at it, because just gagging from the odor. So
No. This was not, this wasn't Pyke who went in. It was Mountbatten who brought it in.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you're right. You're right. It was
he
my
would have
bad.
been properly groomed.
Oh, yes. And he probably smelled really nice.
I'm sure.
Churchill sees it floating there, resistant to the heat, and he's sold immediately. And Winnie was always very enthusiastic about these off-the-cuff ideas.
Sure was.
Always gave his full support, to his credit. He gives it the code name Habakkuk, a reference to the biblical book, quote, I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe, though it be told you. Sounds like something a certain president says all the time, which is what, well, it's basically what I said to my English professor at McGill when I asked for an extension on paper.
Good biblical reference, good biblical name here. Churchill orders a project to proceed with the highest priority. They wanted a ship 2,000 feet long.
Yeah.
Way bigger than anything else afloat, displacing 2.2 million tons. And we should point out that the longest aircraft carrier ever built in World War II was the Japanese Shinano at 872 feet long. So 2,000 feet was ambitious to say the least.
Yeah, and the Japanese used metal and wood and things, and here we're just talking about pulp and ice. So just to get an idea, now you've given a really good idea of the size of it, Colin. Now, in terms of weight, this thing is 74 times heavier than the USS Yorktown, a contemporary aircraft carrier. So you have an idea how, you've got the Shinano there, and this is bigger than that, and it's far heavier than one of the biggest aircraft carriers of the time as well. The scale of this work is genuinely hard to believe.
Yeah, now to be clear for everybody, they never actually built the thing, but they did build models of it, but this is what you're planning on doing.
Yes, that's right.
But before we go further, Rejoy, this feels like the right moment, indeed, for a fantasy sponsor.
Absolutely, because if you're discussing an aircraft carrier made of ice and sawdust, well, the only responsible thing to do is pause for a drink.
This episode is definitely not brought to you by Pykrete Pale Ale, the reinforced wartime beer for when ordinary ice lacks the structural integrity for naval aviation.
Brewed from 85% frozen water, 15% wood pulp, and a dangerous amount of Admiralty confidence.
Tasting notes include wet sawdust, classified lake water, Canadian winter, and a finish of procurement staff asking whether this counts as a ship or a forestry product.
Pykrete Pale Ale, best served cold. Very cold.
Yes, very cold.
Very cold indeed.
Speaking of cold, now we get to the Canadian connection. They needed a cold, remote spot to build a prototype, and they chose Patricia Lake in Jasper, Alberta.
Interesting. A lot of P's in the names.
A lot of P's.
A lot of P's. So they built a 1,000-ton scale model there. Colin, you were mentioning that they built models. Now, here you go. They didn't just build small models. They built big models. I'm not talking about an Airfix airplane kit here. 1,000-ton scale model. But here's the human element. The guys building it were conscientious objectors. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Mennonites and others who refused to fight for religious reasons and were doing alternative service.
They were living in tough work camp conditions, and they had zero clue what they were actually building. Can you imagine? Just, what the fuck am I doing? I'm mixing water and pulp. They thought it was a boathouse or a floating workshop of some types.
Indeed. We have the account of a young conscientious objector named Henry Martins. He remembered being puzzled by the work and actually carried scars from the burns he got from the hot tar used for waterproofing. So imagine being a pacifist and accidentally building a prototype for the world's largest warship. I mean, when you find out after the war, that's going to go down really well.
Oops. Now, the next part of the story sounds like it's straight out of a Matt Damon movie. Imagine the scene. The Quebec Conference, 1943. Mountbatten wants to prove Pykrete's worth to the top Allied brass.
So he sets up 2 blocks, 1 regular ice, 1 pykrete. He pulls out his service pistol and, with a wave to the crowd, a nonchalant twirl of the fingers, shoots the ice. It shatters. Then he looks around and looks at the pykrete, and he shoots at the pykrete. What happens, Colin, when he shoots at the pykrete?
Some say it grazed Admiral Ernest King's leg. Others say it hit Sir Alan Brooke in the shoulder. And one even claims it narrowly missed Sir Charles Portal.
Well, either way, you've got a Royal Navy officer firing a live round in a room full of world leaders. I can't make this stuff up.
I struggle to believe that part, but hey.
There you go. Total chaos. General Hap Arnold even took a hatchet to the stuff, and the wax just bounced back, jarring his arm. It's kind of like if anyone's seen Lord of the Rings and that part where Gimli the dwarf is trying to smash the ring with his axe. That's the kind of scenario we're talking about, but, significantly bigger than a ring.
I wonder if this is what inspired Arnold to go on to his mass bombing campaigns and just completely obliterate Tokyo.
Sheer rage.
I think so. He just wanted to show them.
Well, he threw out his shoulder as well. So
yeah, exactly. Got that sort of shoulder you got to deal with, and he's all into firestorms, so maybe it was because fire and ice.
Fire and ice. Oh, very good. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I like where he did that.
This crazy story seems like the perfect time to point out that this episode is also definitely not brought to you by Mountbatten's Ricochet Rum, the premium naval spirit for demonstrations that begin as science and end as significant incident reports.
Inspired by the legendary moment when Lord Mountbatten allegedly proved Pykrete's strength by shooting it.
Yes, tasting notes include gunpowder, polished mahogany, staff officer panic, and a sharp finish of, whose leg did that nearly hit?
Mountbatten's Ricochet Rum, because nothing says proof of concept like everyone suddenly checking for exit wounds.
Can you fucking imagine being some of the staff officers outside the room? Just as all the adults in the room are in there discussing big strategy, and this night you hear a fucking gunshot go off.
Yeah, that report that ricochets around the room.
Woo. Churchill's in there, Roosevelt's in there, Mackenzie King's in there, and someone thought it'd be a good idea to bring a loaded pistol. Yeah, good call. All right, way to go, Mountbatten. Okay, so back to the story here. As they're building the model in Jasper, the engineers hit a wall, an ice wall. The ice has this property called cold flow or creep, Essentially, the ship would start to slowly sag under its own weight unless it was kept at exactly minus 15 or minus 16 degrees Celsius. Minus 14 wouldn't work. Minus 17 wouldn't work. Had to be kept exactly between minus 15 and minus 16.
Thank goodness this is not a complicated plan.
No.
So to do that, you need a massive refrigeration system. Thousands of miles of steel tubing for brine circulation, of course.
Did you say thousands of miles?
Steel.
Miles.
Yes, of
Miles.
steel. Of steel.
Right.
Steel tubing, to be exact.
We were trying to save steel, weren't we?
Yes, because we'll need it for the tubing.
That's the irony. The whole point was to save steel, but a 1.2 kilometer long ice ship was going to require more steel for the cooling plant and reinforcements than building an entire fleet of conventional carriers.
It would also need hundreds of thousands of tons of, well, guess what? Wood pulp. Enough to significantly impact the Allied paper supply. The stuff where reports are written out on.
Plans,
your field pad, all of that stuff. The cost estimates jumped from 700,000 pounds. Remember, 700,000 pounds in 1942 to, so not today's amount, but that amount, which is significantly high, to over 2.5 million pounds almost overnight, which is astronomical.
A slight increase.
Just a little bit.
But logistics and physics, of course, were one thing, but the war was changing too. So by late 1943, the mid-Atlantic air gap was closing without the need for icebergs.
And why was that? Well, first of all, Portugal allowed the Allies to use airfields in the Azore Islands. We got long-range fuel tanks for our planes now. Later on, they'd be perfected so that you'd have P-51 Mustangs flying over Germany as well, escorting the bombers. So everything was starting to change, and the technology was beginning to kick in. And as well as that, the number of small escort carriers was increasing, the corvettes. And that is arguably the most significant thing here.
Yeah, a massive Canadian contribution, right? Those corvettes.
Yes, that's right.
Being pumped out of the shipyards and being crewed by good old boys from the prairies who'd never seen the ocean before.
Well,
got to work. The U.S. Navy looked at the plans and basically called Habakkuk a false prophet. They also realized the ship would only move at 6 or 7 knots, painfully slow for a combat environment.
Yeah, can you imagine that? Whoa, torpedo sighted. Can you give us a couple hours to get out of the way?
I think it's going to take a couple more than it's going to take a little bit more than one torpedo to sink this 2.2 million ton, 1.2 kilometer long pykrete iceberg.
Well, as the torpedo ricochets off and hits a submarine again, that could have been very effective. The Germans going, Scheiße. So anyway, Lord Mountbatten eventually withdrew his support. And I love that word. Eventually withdrew his support. So despite all the bullets ricocheting around rooms and the costs increasing astronomically, and the fact that you need steel and wood pulp and all of that, he eventually withdrew his support. So
and now he had to go find a new party trick, right? He got that one down.
That is true. That is true. The project was officially shelved in December 1943. So that means it lived in the imagination for quite some time. Nature and technology, of course, had simply outrun the idea, which means they probably needed a fantasy sponsor, Colin.
Who doesn't, really?
Yes.
This episode is definitely not brought to you by Churchill's Frozen Reserve, the premium wartime spirit for leaders who believe victory may depend on a 2 million ton refrigerated iceberg with a flight deck.
A bold blend of cigar smoke, Atlantic fog, strategic desperation, and just enough brandy to make naval architecture optional.
Tasting notes include oak, tobacco, cold seawater, most secret memoranda, and engineers whispering, Prime Minister, ice does melt,
Best served in a bunker, beside a map, while someone explains the ship needs refrigeration to remain, a ship.
Churchill's Frozen Reserve, because when things get desperate, the answer may be ice, sawdust, and ignoring summer.
Of course.
Makes me think of at work, poor engineers that we've got. We've got a great little engineering team at work, and every time we bring them these great ideas, and you see them kind of like... I want to teach classes at engineering school on how to deal with really annoying salespeople who have no idea how things actually work. All right. So what happened to the famous Jasper, was it 1,000-ton prototype?
That's right.
Well, they stripped the machinery and probably all the steel because they needed that, and
They
just
needed
left
that.
it. They just left it there. And it took 3 full Canadian summers to melt. And you Americans or who else, maybe South Africans we have that listen to this, don't get too dismissive about the heat of a Canadian summer.
That's
Dear
right.
listener, it gets plenty hot in Jasper.
You would be surprised.
Yes. You would. The record, I was surprised when I looked it up. The record was 39.4 degrees Celsius set in 1927, which translated to American is about 1 million degrees Fahrenheit, if I did my calculations correctly.
It's the best Fahrenheit.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, 3 summers at that heat. So 3 summers. So that actually proves how effective pykrete was. So today, however, it's a dive site. So if you choose to go diving there, you can still see the refrigeration pipes and the wooden frame at the bottom of Patricia Lake.
I wouldn't mind doing that, actually. There's an underwater plaque down there, cleverly placed by divers in 1988. It's a silent monument to a weird, desperate moment in history. And speaking of silent monuments, this feels like a good spot to work in a connection to our beloved RMR, which I'm guessing most listeners would have thought we'd have been unable to do so. But we will.
Indeed. And I got to hand it to you. The way you went about pulling this one in is truly magical.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
It's not like we're going to be constrained by facts or any other such tedious requirements, because there is actually most definitely an RMR connection. So, dear listeners, much like Colin just said, there is a silent monument to Project Habakkuk in Alberta. Well, there's one of 2 silent monuments to RMR heroes located right in Alberta.
That's right, Rejoy. The Canadian government named some of the Rocky Mountains after Victoria Cross winners. We do have an episode on the Victoria Cross. You should check it out. And they named Mount Scrimgeour, VC, which at 9,039 feet in British Columbia. But the one for this connection is Mount McKean, Victoria Cross, at 9,000 feet in Jasper itself, precisely where the testing for Project Habakkuk was conducted. Fans of the show will likely recall our retelling of Scrimgeour's story in our earlier episodes on Yeep and, of course, the other episodes on gas warfare. But I think, Rejoy, we're overdue to do an episode on McKean.
No, I agree with you completely. We are overdue, and that is something I'm sure we will address in the very near future. And Pyke, whatever happened to Smelly Pyke? Well, he never really stopped. He kept designing things, peculiar ideas like a pneumatic tube to fire soldiers onto Japanese beaches.
Hey, we're not making this shit up, people.
You can look it up. It's all there.
I'm sorry, sir. You want me to get in what?
We'll just give it a shot. Well, he died in 1948 from an intentional overdose. Probably testing something else out. I'm sure this will work fine. And he was found lying on a pile of papers, still writing ideas as he faded away.
Seriously, it was still scribbling the hypergraphia. Yeah.
Someone call an ambulance.
I made a big mistake. Oh, we should not be laughing about that.
No, we should not. We should not.
Pretty evil of us. All right. As former soldiers, we often laugh, inappropriately, as we just showed. We also laugh at the big ideas from the rear, but you have to admire the sheer brass it took to even suggest this.
You really do, because remember, as you rightly said, Colin, of course, and that's what I think a lot of soldiers have in common. When times are tough, you laugh. That's how you deal with it. But that was a real problem. That mid-Atlantic gap was accounting for a tremendous amount of shipping that was being sunk.
Correct.
And you got to remember that was Britain's lifeline.
Yeah.
And that was what was fueling the war effort. And if a solution was not found to that problem, there was a very real chance that the war would drag on far longer and be much, much tougher. So it's a real thing. And this whole idea speaks to that desperation of 1942, because 1942 was really a very, very dark year for the Allies. So we're starting to come out.
The other way.
Could have gone the other way very easily. So when your back is against the wall, you'll listen to the mad inventor. You'll ask conscientious objectors to pour tar in the Rockies for a ship made of sawdust and water. You'll do almost anything.
Yeah, it's a story of human endurance, not just for the sailors in the Atlantic, but for the scientists and the laborers who tried to build the impossible.
Plausible? but ludicrous. That's Project Habakkuk.
Oh, I thought those are motto.
It is. I'm glad you worked that in as well. Thanks for joining us on the Rum Ration podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and remember us in your will, because we can't live on fantasy sponsors forever.
No.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Cheers to
Cheers
history.
to history.